die daily of melanoma skin cancer.
You know, we are laughing because we're incredulous, but it is so not funny because we're hearing some of the same language like, you know, Big Pharma doesn't want you to know this. It's the same language we heard during COVID for anti-vaxxers, and we know how many people died during COVID. Please hear this from UPenn dermatologist Dr. Susan Taylor. She's also president of the American Academy of Dermatology. Dr. Taylor, Susan, thank you so much.
Thank you, Robert.
And you're listening to Here and Now.
Live from NPR News in Boston, I'm Steve Brown. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer welcomed Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to London today in a show of British support for Ukraine, a day before the critical Trump-Putin meeting. The two embraced warmly outside Starmer's offices at 10 Downing Street without making any comments, and Zelensky departed about an hour later. Zelensky's trip to the British capital came a day after he took part in a virtual meeting from Berlin with Trump and the leaders of several European countries. COVID-19 activity is rising in much of the country. Data show overall respiratory virus spread is very low in the U.S., but COVID-19 is rising in most states, with more people of all ages going to emergency rooms because of it. The Stratus variant is most common. It can cause a razor blade sore throat and is considered a variant under monitoring by the World Health Organization, but it is only marginally better at evading people's immune systems. 6 planets are hanging out in the sky this month in what's known as a planetary parade, and it's the last one of the year. These fairly common link-ups happen when several planets appear to line up in the night sky at once. Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, and a faint Mercury are visible this month to the naked eye. Best chances to spot them are over the next week. You're listening to Here and Now.
You're listening to News 88.7.
President Trump fired the Commissioner of Labor Statistics for what he calls rigged jobs numbers. The president says he made this firing to address incompetence. But can we really trust that the next commissioner is going to be picked for expertise and not for loyalty? I'm David Green. We'll talk this through with Moa Lathy on the left and Mike Dupke on the right. That's on the next Left, Right, and Center.
You can hear it this Sunday. It's on at 5 p.m.
Support comes from the extended campus at UT Austin, whose continuing and professional education programs, including online degrees and certificates, prepare today's leaders for tomorrow's demanding careers. More at extendedcampus.utexas.edu.
Donations come in many forms: a monthly membership, a one-time gift, and that extra vehicle you no longer need. We take any kind of vehicle in any condition. Learn more at houstonpublicmedia.org/cars. And thank you.
Funding for Here and Now comes from the listeners of WBUR Boston and MathWorks, creator of MATLAB and Simulink software for technical computing and model-based design. MathWorks, accelerating the pace of discovery in engineering and science. Learn more at mathworks.com. And BetterHelp, committed to supporting mental health through therapy and helping clients find balance. Clients are matched with one of 30,000 therapists for online therapy from anywhere at betterhelp.com/public.
This is the Engines of Our Ingenuity from Houston Public Media, News 88.7.
Today, an experiment. The University of Houston presents this series about the machines that make our civilization run and the people whose ingenuity created them. I recently performed an experiment quite unwittingly. Heating some milk while visiting France, I brought it to a boil, though only for a second or two. The result wasn't hot milk for my coffee. Instead, I found curds, the milk solids used to make cheese, and whey, a semi-clear liquid that consists mostly of water. The whey also contains most of the milk's lactose, which is why people with lactose intolerance frequently have no trouble consuming cheese. For those of us who live in the United States, this comes as a bit of a surprise. In the U.S., bringing milk to a boil yields boiling milk. And the answer all boils down to the way milk is pasteurized. We're all familiar with pasteurization. heat milk to kill enough bacteria that it remains safe to consume when it arrives at the grocery store from the dairy farm. In fact, this heating process long predates its namesake, Louis Pasteur. The real breakthrough came with the experimentation of French chef Nicolas Appert in 1795, where he took to heating all manner of things to help preserve them. Fruits, vegetables, jams, you name it. His process was successful and caught on internationally. Of course, Appert had no inkling about germ theory. He just observed that the heating process worked. Experimental evidence leading to the acceptance of germ theory would wait another half-century for the work of fellow Frenchman, the aforementioned Louis Pasteur. While pasteurization involves the heating of food, two important variables are how hot and how long. In France, milk is typically heated to 300 degrees for around 3 seconds. In the U.S., milk is heated to roughly half that temperature, but about 5 times longer. And while we don't often think about it, heating brings about a wealth of molecular changes when applied to any food. The result, French milk can, and is, stored unrefrigerated on grocery store shelves for 3 to 6 months. And, as we know, it also turns to curds and whey when boiled. When properly refrigerated, U.S. milk has a shelf life of only 7 to 10 days. Of course, the process by which milk is pasteurized also changes its flavor, and the lower temperature U.S. process brings about less change. The French are willing to accept this trade-off of flavor versus practicality, except when they're not. Take cheese. In the U.S., virtually all milk-derived products must use pasteurized milk as a matter of law. Not so in France. When it comes to making cheese, pasteurized milk is not a legal requirement. Most of the cheese found in grocery stores is pasteurized, but unpasteurized cheese is widely available and sought after at the many fromageries, shops dedicated solely to selling cheese. And it's understandable why the French make this exception. This is, after all, a country whose love affair with cheese is like any great love affair. Consuming, complex, surprising, sometimes difficult, always unforgettable. I'm Andy Boyd at the University of Houston, where we're interested in the way inventive minds work.
A transcript of this Engines of Our Ingenuity episode, number 3327, is online at uh.edu/engines. Additional episodes are available by podcast.
So,
where are you?
Here at Radio Lab, we go places.
Riding in an elevator.
From her bathroom.
Walking through shin-length grass.
Are we in a boat?
No, but we're gonna be.
In Namibia.
On Mars.
In my closet.
Poughkeepsie, New York.
To
Kolkata. Inside the womb.
Wow. And
everywhere.
You guys are gonna have lobster talk.
Radio Lab, Saturdays at 9 p.m. on News 88.7.
Now, Mexican wrestling is a familial affair, so the abuelas, the grandmothers, everyone down to the kids start cursing at me. I feel like the entire arena wants to see me massacred.
Join us for more true stories told live. Luchadors, Tamagotchis, and more. That's on the Moth Radio Hour from PRX.
You can hear the Moth Radio Hour coming up this Saturday. It's on at noon.
Support Houston Public Media by donating a vehicle you no longer need. We'll take it in any condition. It's free to you, easy to do, and it could mean hundreds of dollars in support. Visit houstonpublicmedia.org/cars to learn more. Thanks.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Dekamara. The 25-26 season features a Schubert Perspectives series, jazz with Branford Marsalis and Pat Metheny, and much more. Information and tickets at dekamara.com.
Funding for Here and Now comes from the listeners of WBUR Boston and the Museum of Science Boston, dedicated to inspiring a lifelong love of science in everyone, in museums, classrooms, and online, offering engineering design challenges, digital experiences, live presentations, and more. MOS.org. And Road Scholar, celebrating 50 years of transformative learning adventures for adults in over 100 countries. Learn more at roadscholar.org/explore.
From NPR and WBUR, I'm Robin Young in Boston.
And I'm Scott Tong in Washington, D.C. This is Here and Now. We're going to play some haunting audio now from Hurricane Ian, one of Florida's deadliest ever hurricanes from 3 years ago. The storm brought a whopping 18 feet of storm surge to southwest Florida. Many residents evacuated. Mitch Pacina did not.
Probably made a very bad decision to stay. Oh my God. Wrong decision. This ain't letting up yet. If it gets a little higher, may have to go on the roof.
The 74-year-old Pacina posted videos during the storm. Tragically, when his house collapsed, he jumped into the rushing waters and his body was later found. In all, more than 150 people died in the storm, which is the focus of a new documentary from member station WGCU Public Media. It's called Rising, Surviving the Surge. And with us now is Janine Zeitlin, the documentary's senior producer and writer. Hey, Janine, thanks for joining us.
Hi, thanks for having me.
You know, we just heard the voice of Mitch Pacina, the resident of Florida. He, of course, did not survive Hurricane Ian. What struck you hearing from people, hearing about people who stayed and tried to ride it out?
So I'm a resident of Southwest Florida, and I heard a lot of haunting stories throughout our storm coverage of Hurricane Ian. But Mitch Pacina's story was probably the one that struck me the most, because we saw how he tried to survive the storm, and we saw how his thinking changed when he was going through the storm. And unfortunately, his last post, his Facebook post, because he was filming all of this on social media in real time, and his last Facebook post was, "Okay, we're terrified." And that just hit me in the gut and stuck with me. So I knew that I wanted to include his story in the documentary.
And were you watching his posts in real time during the storm?
I was when I saw that post, and then later saw that he was one of the Ian victims. It was incredibly heartbreaking.
Yeah. But you have others. I mean, others who decided to stay. Many of them appeared to have survived, but this was just a magnitude of storm for people who stayed, where you could hear in their voices, you could see in the video that this is an entirely different storm they did not expect.
They did not expect a storm like this. And a lot of the people who stayed were longtime Floridians, even native Floridians. We had not seen a storm like this in Southwest Florida in collective memory, in their memories, my memory. So people weren't prepared, and a lot of people stayed because they thought, we've ridden out other storms and we can make it through this one. But Ian was like no other storm that Southwest Florida experienced.
Well, just to back up, Hurricane Ian was a Category 4 storm when it made landfall in September 2022 near Cayo Costa in southwest Florida. Here's an interview from your documentary with resident Ralph Woodring.
This was the damnedest hurricane that hit here in my time and anybody else's time that's around and knows anything about it. It was wicked.
It was wicked. Do you get a sense, Janine, after talking to so many people, you have so many powerful interviews in this, that people are changed, that their behavior may now change with future hurricanes because of what they saw and survived?
I do believe that their behavior has changed, and we saw that in last hurricane season. Ralph Woodring, when we interviewed him before the 2024 hurricane season, he talked about, well, I'll stay for the next one too. But when the storms came again in 2024, he did evacuate. And we had talked to other people as well who said, you know what, I'm still not going to evacuate. But when the threats were real last year, they did.
Well, one feature of Hurricane Ian was the remarkable storm surge. The water rose a remarkable 12 feet, 18 feet in places. And you visited vulnerable communities with mobile manufactured homes, historically black neighborhoods that are still clearly working to rebuild and to recover. And is one reason because they live on the lowest land, the bottom of the bowl got hit the hardest?
To some degree, yes. And a lot of them are older homes as well. So they were built in a time when our building regulations didn't require them to be elevated as much or the homes to be as strong. And a lot of these communities were historically segregated, so it wasn't necessarily the people's choice to live there when people first started living there.
Well, I want to play some sound from your film of Jackie Dean, who lives in one of these historically black neighborhoods.
Even the second day after the hurricane, I had people approaching me, and people pull up, want to know, are you ready to sell your home? I mean, it was kind of hurtful right after the storm.
What did you say?
No, I'm not.
No, I'm not going to sell. Tell us Jackie Dean's story. It's powerful.
It is. So she lives in River Park East, which was one of the first communities in Naples, Florida, where black residents could buy their own home. And her mother was a single mother, and she worked many jobs in order to afford the home that Jackie Dean now lives in. Jackie Dean inherited her home. So she did not ever recall flooding like she had seen during Ian occurring in that neighborhood. So she stayed with her son, and they ended up having to evacuate during the storm to higher ground at a convenience store on the outskirts of their neighborhood.
And was Jackie Dean the person in your film who eventually, I guess with the help of a nonprofit, convinced authorities to elevate her house so that she can hopefully stay dry the next time?
Yes, she volunteered when a nonprofit came into her community, the Collier Community Foundation, and said, can we help you elevate your homes? Because they knew that those homes needed to be elevated if that neighborhood, that historic neighborhood, was going to survive. And they worked together and convinced the Naples City Council that they needed to do this project. And so her home is being elevated as we speak, and soon she'll be able to move back in, which is a really nice thing to see.
Now, Hurricane Ian hit in 2022 and was then followed by a string of big storms. Idalia in 2023, Debbie, Helene, Milton in 2024. Let's hear some sound in the documentary from federal forecaster and meteorologist Chris Lancy.
There's a lot of uncertainty about how long this current busy period will continue, partly because we don't know exactly what the cause is.
And I guess that's the thing. I mean, the scientists know about climate change. They know about some associations with hurricanes, but is the reality that they really don't know if past is prologue, if we're going to see this kind of string of big hurricanes in the future?
Well, they do know that because of climate change and warming seas that our storms will be stronger and they'll carry more water. But they couldn't tell us whether we're going to see this level of frequency of storms.
Yeah. So then where does that leave residents? Because we're coming into the really active part of the hurricane season. Right? Where does that leave experts and residents as they prepare for the upcoming season? I mean, do they seem to be more ready given the lessons of Ian?
I definitely think people are more prepared. We've had a lot of practice. Our emergency management officials, they're getting really good at preparing for these hurricanes, and people are as well. But, you know, people need a break. After Ian and after the 2024 season, people are tired. People are anxious. They just want to either be home, and many people still aren't. You know, they're still rebuilding. Some people have had to leave the area. It's just too expensive to adapt their homes for the reality of storm surge.
Yeah. And finally, Janine, what about you? You lived there. Have you learned something from going through all this that is going to help you make decisions when a next big one comes?
I learned that I am very happy to live far from the water and in a home that was built after 1995. If you live away from the water and you live in a newer home, you can survive these storms, but not all people are in that situation, of course. A lot of our development is located along the water.
Yeah, where a lot of people, of course, do want to live.
Mm-hmm.
We've been talking to Janine Zeitlin, senior producer and writer of the WGCU documentary Rising, Surviving the Surge. And you can find it on the station's YouTube channel, again, WGCU. Janine, thanks so much for the time.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're listening to Here and Now.
Hi, this is Matt Harrop. There's been a lot of news to cover in Houston over the last few months. Keep listening to Houston Public Media for the latest, and if you've got a car, truck, boat, or RV you don't need anymore, donate it to the station. It could be worth hundreds of dollars in support. The donation process is easy for you, and we'll pick up your vehicle in any condition. Here's how to get started. Go to houstonpublicmedia.org/cars to learn more. Thank you.
I'm Christopher Kimball from Milk Street Radio. If you think you have what it takes to be a cowboy, please don't tell anyone.
Son, out here, we don't speak words. We just let our actions show what we can do.
This week, we're learning how to act and cook like a cowboy. That's coming up this week on Milk Street Radio from PRX.
You can listen to Milk Street Radio this Sunday at 1 o'clock.
Funding for Here and Now comes from the listeners of WBUR Boston and from MathWorks, creator of MATLAB and Simulink software for technical computing and model-based design. MathWorks, accelerating the pace of discovery in engineering and science. Learn more at mathworks.com. And City Space Productions, WBUR's creative studio for custom podcasts that tell a brand's story to ignite engagement, reach new audiences, or enhance customer connections. WBUR.org/creative studio.
This is Here and Now. We are, of course, in the month of August, so we're asking, how's your garden growing? No surprise, Here and Now resident chef Kathy Gunst has had a bounty of fresh produce. And again, to no surprise, she's brought some new recipes for us for this exact time of the year. Kathy, how are you?
Hi, Scott. I'm pretty well. I have to mention that a lot of animals have been enjoying my garden, such as groundhogs and deer and turkeys and turtles. And it's, I've been feeding the entire forest.
well, there you go. Well, you have several recipes we're going to talk about. Before we get into those, I want to tell you about my attempt to make panna cotta. You talked to us last month about the recipe. I have never had it before. It's on our website, so you can go there. My goodness, this dessert, so delightful in the summer, cold, not too sweet. I just got the berry, raspberry, blackberry puree, a little runny. I don't know. I sent you a picture. You took a look.
Yeah, I took a look. I don't think you cooked it down far enough, but it looked beautiful. And I could tell that you nailed the consistency of the panna cotta. I could practically feel it wobble on the photo. So thanks for trying it.
And so fun to have it in the ramekin and then flip it upside down and here we go. Right?
Yeah,
this
you
is the
feel
test.
like a pro. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So moving on to your recipes. You have a corn, poblano, and celery chowder. Tell us about this. This uses corn off the cob, yeah?
Yeah, which is quite simple to do. You simply shuck the corn, you hold the ear of corn in a large bowl, and you take a sharp knife and just run it down alongside the cob to release the kernels, and you work your way around the whole cob. And then when you're done, you take the blunt side of the knife, the opposite side, and push down. And what you do is you release what's called the corn milk. And this is very creamy and it's very sweet, and it adds extra corn yumminess to anything you're cooking. So getting back to the chowder, this is a very light summery chowder. It uses onions and poblano peppers, whatever peppers you have, celery and potatoes, and then lots of corn kernels off the fresh cob since they are in season. And then you add milk and or cream if you want. There's no flour, no thickeners, lots of fresh herbs. So it's got the crunch of the celery and the crunch of the corn, and very light. It can really be a whole summer dinner with a nice summer salad and a warm baguette.
Oh, I love that. And this soup, which has a little crunch, just that contrast to me. I love opportunities like that.
Same.
All right. Your next recipe is for a farro salad. Farro, something that's become very popular in the last few years. Remind the rest of us, what is it?
Well, the most important thing is that it's a whole grain. It's very good for you. It's got this wonderful bite to it. So when you cook pasta, they say cook it till al dente. Farro's like that. It's sort of toothsome, and it's got this wonderful nutty, almost a crunchiness also. It pairs beautifully with summer vegetables. So in this case, you cook the farro in just boiling water. It absorbs the water, and then you toss the farro while it's warm with grated lemon zest and lemon juice. And what this does is infuse like a summer flavor immediately. Then you steam some green beans, you saute some red onions and zucchini with fresh basil. You toss all the vegetables with the farro. You could add feta cheese cubed, which adds a wonderful creaminess. So you've got herbs and lemons and fresh vegetables and this really nutty grain. It's just also a very good main course dinner or a side dish, picnic, barbecue.
Yeah. I just did it midday today for lunch, and I didn't have the feta, so I subbed in fresh mozzarella, which we did have.
Excellent. Yeah, that works.
Oh, turned out so great.
You could also use goat cheese. It's an extremely adaptable recipe.
Yeah. All right. And finally, quickly, you have a recipe for chicken with corn, tomato, zucchini, and herbs. Tell us about that.
You take boneless chicken thighs, skin on or off, and you pound them between 2 sheets of wax paper. You can use a rolling pin, you can use a meat pounder, and what you're trying to do is get it a bit thinner and all of equal thickness. You're going to saute the chicken, but right before that, you're going to saute some onion and fresh herbs, zucchini, fresh tomatoes, and a cup of corn kernels off the cob. So you've got this wonderful, very chopped vegetables dish. You put that on your platter, the zucchini, the tomato, the corn, the herbs, even a few capers, a nice piquant, salty, lovely kind of pickled flavor. And then the sauteed chicken goes on top of that. You can sprinkle it with some fresh arugula leaves. Takes about 20-25 minutes, and it's a gorgeous summer main course.
Wow.
Try that next, Scott. You're going to love that one.
I shall. We've been talking recipes using the best of summer produce with Here and Now resident chef Kathy Gunst. As usual, you'll find her recipes on our website, hereandnow.org. Kathy, thank you as always.
Thanks, Scott, and thanks for trying the dishes.
Lunchtime. Here and Now is a production of NPR and WBUR. I'm Scott Tong in Washington, D.C.
It's breakfast on the West Coast. I'm Robin Young in Boston. This is Here and Now.
Funding for Here and Now comes from the listeners of WBUR Boston and Loomis Sales, working to fulfill the investment needs of institutional and retail clients worldwide by integrating proprietary research and risk analysis to develop a customized approach for each investor. LoomisSales.com.
I'm Greg Dalton.
And I'm Ariana Brocious. On Climate One, we believe that addressing the climate crisis begins by talking about it.
So we engage diverse voices to deepen your understanding of all aspects of the climate emergency, the individual and the systemic.
The scary and the exciting, causes and solutions.
So join us for conversations about the most critical issue of our time on Climate One.
Sundays at 6 a.m. on News 88.7.
On the next Living on Earth, turning paved yards into pollinator havens starts with a sledgehammer.
That first drop just releases so much rage. And we have a lot to rage about right now.
I'm Jenny Doring. Climate resilience with a side of catharsis. Next time on Living on Earth from PRX.
You can hear it Saturday night. It's on at 10.
Houston Public Media is a service of the University of Houston and is supported with your gifts to the Houston Public Media Foundation. More information available online at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
You may be seeing some sunshine. We do have a 50% chance of a shower or thunderstorm this afternoon, the high 94. It's 93, and this is your NPR station, KUHF, Houston. News 88.7. A service of the University of Houston. It's 2 o'clock.
As federal law enforcement shows up on the streets of Washington, D.C., other cities wonder if they could be next. From WAMU and NPR in Washington, this is 1A. Hi, I'm Jen White. Today on 1A, the Trump administration's takeover of law enforcement in our nation's capital. Wednesday night, the National Guard deployed in D.C. along with agents from the FBI and ICE. President Trump has also seized control of the city's police department, saying he'd like to control the force long term. All of this in the name of what he says is a crime emergency, but the data tell a different story. What's behind the president's law and order push and what it could mean across the U.S. All that coming up after this news.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. President Trump predicts his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin can make peace after tomorrow's summit.
I think it's going to be a good meeting, but the more important meeting will be the second meeting that we're having. We're going to have a meeting with President Putin, President Zelensky, myself, and maybe we'll bring some of the European leaders along, maybe not.
Trump has referenced boundaries and lands when he talked about what it might take for Russia to agree to a ceasefire with Ukraine. Ukraine has categorically rejected any proposal to cede territory as a condition of securing a truce in his country's more than 3-year defense against Russia's full-scale invasion. Mississippi can still require users to verify their ages before they're allowed on social media sites such as Instagram or Snapchat. Today, the U.S. Supreme Court rejected NetChoice's emergency appeal on grounds the law threatens rights to privacy and free expression. Justice Brett Kavanaugh wrote that the tech industry group could eventually succeed in showing Mississippi's law is unconstitutional, but he ultimately agreed with the High Court's current position, saying NetChoice failed to sufficiently demonstrate legal harm. More than 100 aid organizations have issued a demand to end what they describe as Israel's weaponization of aid to Gaza. Here's NPR's Jana Raff.
The statement says most organizations have been unable to deliver a single truckload of aid to Gaza since March, when Israel introduced new registration rules. Aid groups describe the rules as unlawful, unsafe, and incompatible with humanitarian principles. Israel issued a statement saying that the refusal of some non-governmental organizations to register raises the possibility of ties between those groups and the militant group Hamas. One U.S.-based group, ANERA, says Israel is blocking more than $7 million worth of its aid, including food for 6 million meals, just a few miles from the border. Jana Raff, NPR News, Amman.
Residents in Washington, D.C.'s most dangerous neighborhood say they welcome more law enforcement, but question whether President Trump's deployment of soldiers and federal agents is a solution. NPR's Frank Langford has this from Washington.
Aaron lives in Congress Heights in a section of D.C. where there have been 38 homicides so far this year. But Aaron, who asked NPR not to reveal his last name to protect his federal government job, is skeptical that National Guard troops who aren't trained in law enforcement will help.
I would have loved to have seen maybe more funding for police, or maybe getting some of the command folks behind the desk and put them out on the street for presence.
Instead, Aaron says he thinks Trump is making a show of force to embarrass a Democratic-led city instead of addressing the capital's very real crime problem in a lasting way. Frank Langford, NPR News, Washington.
From Washington, this is NPR News.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Gail DeLauder. Police are on the scene of an officer-involved shooting on the northwest side. It happened on Tanglehead Court near Beltway 8. Precinct 4 Constable Mark Herman says a deputy shot a man during a domestic violence call. A woman inside was found dead. The suspect was taken to the hospital and the officer wasn't hurt. As students across Texas head back to school this week, districts are grappling with how to comply with new state laws. News 88.7's Natalie Weber says some of the legislation focuses on libraries and diversity initiatives.
Texas Senate Bills 12 and 13 will enforce wide-ranging changes across public schools. Senate Bill 12 restricts several diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. It prevents schools from sponsoring gay-straight alliances. Meanwhile, Senate Bill 13 allows districts to create a school library council to guide their policies for books in schools. Joy Baskin is an associate executive director at the Texas Association of School Boards, which helps school districts navigate new laws.
Our primary goal this summer has been to read and digest the new legislation and help translate it into our policy resources.
The bills will formally go into effect on September 1st. I'm Natalie Weber, News 88.7.
The National Weather Service is watching an area of low pressure in the Gulf. It has a 20% chance of becoming a cyclone over the next 2 days. National Weather Service meteorologist Bradley Brokamp.
Aside from some rain and some current risk, right now, obviously, the conditions aren't looking super favorable for it producing much more than just that.
Forecasters say the tropical system could bring rain to South Texas this weekend, and they're not expecting any hurricane development. Overnight low tonight should be around 80 degrees. We have a 40% chance of rain tomorrow, partly cloudy skies. High should be around 93 degrees, and then tomorrow night a slight chance of rain and a low only around 80. I'm Gail DeLauder, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation, supporting books, radio, podcasts, film, television, theater, and more to bridge science and the humanities.